Starting in the 1800s, we began to measure and track cognitive development, and every generation since then, they've outperformed their parents, which is exactly what we'd want. We want every generation of kids to be sharper and smarter than the ones that came before. And that has been the case for every generation, until Gen Z. Gen Z is the first generation in history to underperform their parents, and this is on every cognitive measure that's tested: attention span, memory, numeracy, literacy, even general IQ. And yet they spend their days at school, luckily more than any other generation. So what happened? What happened about 15 years ago that caused this youngest generation to fall behind? Because up until now, there's been a pretty strong correlation. More time at school equals greater cognitive development. But around 2010, that correlation, it broke apart, and it even started to go the other way. A neuroscientist by the name of Dr. Jared Cooney-Horvath says that it's actually the tools that kids are using to learn that's holding them back. The evidence, he claims, is overwhelming. It's across 80 countries, and the data shows that once countries adopt digital technology widely within their schools, learning begins to tank. Their performance at school in every measurable way, it takes a hit. And so for kids who spend 5 hours a day learning on computers, they will consistently score lower in standardized testing than kids who rarely or never use technology to learn. Remember, this is across 80 different countries. So the truth is, when tech enters education, learning goes down. And it's important for parents to know this because parents have very important decisions to make in regards to their children's learning. And of course, they care about the cognitive development and abilities of their children. So I think it's important for parents to know what type of technology is being used in their children's schools, and is it really helping them, or is it potentially holding them back? We're going to dig into some of these recommendations that the experts are giving today, as well as the studies that have been used to show the effects that technology can have on a developing brain. And that's before kids even get to school. We're going to dive into all of that today. Let's get started. Let's begin by taking a look at what Dr. Horvath, who is a world-leading expert on this topic, says about the connection between children and the use of technology in schools. He says there is clear studies that show why tech is not an effective way for your child to learn.
Luckily, over the last about 2 decades, we've been doing a lot of work in what we call the science of learning. How do human beings learn? And we now have the clear understanding of why tech does not work for learning, and it is all biological. It's not that the tech isn't being used well enough, we haven't been trained enough, we need better programs. It's we have evolved biologically to learn from other human beings, not from screens. And screens circumvent that process.
Isn't it interesting that we were designed to learn and connect with other humans, and when we try and replace human connection with supposedly more efficient or effective ways of learning, we actually end up losing our very intelligence? And it seems like one of the primary negative effects that technology is having, especially on developing brains, is the destruction of our attention spans. Dr. Horvath gives some evidence of the differences between what children used to be able to do regarding reading comprehension and what they're expected to be able to do today.
Think back to your childhood, to your schooling. I guarantee all of us at one point took a test on reading comprehension. And the way it looked is this. Here's a passage of about 750 words. Here are 10 to 12 questions about that passage. Most of them are inferential, not factual. They're asking you to go beyond what you just read to see what you understood. Cool. Last year, the SATs had a reading comprehension section. Here's what it looked like. Here is a single sentence of 75 words. Here is one question, fact-based, about that sentence. Next. Here is another sentence of 75 words. Here is one question about that sentence. Next. Last year, they redefined reading comprehension to mean 54 short sentences with one question about each. That is skimming. That's not reading. Why would we ever do that? Because what do kids do on computers? They skim. So rather than determining what do we want our children to do and gearing education towards that, we are redefining education to better suit the tool. That's not progress, that is surrender.
And this, I would say, is a big problem. I'm sure you right now watching this on your phone or computer, you're well aware of the fact that your phone has more sway over your time and your attention than you'd probably like it to have. You find yourself picking it up more than you would want to, and you're wondering where the time went. Well, that's very common. And now imagine that same pull on developing minds where they're supposed to be in school, a place where they are to learn and push their mental capacities and capabilities to new levels. And it doesn't seem to matter what kind of screen it is or whether it's owned and set up for the sole purpose of learning, as Dr. Hovath points out.
It doesn't matter what the size of the screen is, if it's a phone, if it's a laptop, if it's a desktop, and it doesn't matter who bought it. Is it school sanctioned? Does it have the word education stamped on it? It doesn't matter. All of these things are also going to hurt learning, which in turn are going to hurt our kids' cognitive development, right at the time when we need our kids to be sharper than we are.
And now countries are starting to catch on to what the science is saying, which is really awesome. And an example of this is in Denmark. They're rolling back their use of technology and they're replacing it with some old-fashioned stuff like pens and paper. And everyone, including the children, are noticing the difference. And they start each day by placing their phones in a lockbox. And that's been the rule across Denmark since the start of the year. It's a bit more restrictive than here in New Zealand, where kids are just told to keep their phones in their bags, which I'm sure they always do. But it's not just that the students' own phones are out of sight, out of mind, but all their learning is focused away from technology and back to some old-fashioned stuff.
And here, another visible change has taken place. After a decade of all digital learning, physical textbooks are making a comeback.
I think the biggest issue has been that because we kind of got rid of the books and started using screens instead, and that we've noticed that a lot of the kids have trouble concentrating. So it's pretty easy to swipe with 3 fingers over to a different screen and have a video game going, for example, during class.
Kids aren't dumb. I remember when I was at primary school and we had an opportunity to use the computer suite, we went on math sites that we knew had arcade-style games on them, and we just played those the whole time.
Going, for example, during class.
Here, computers are now used sparingly and always under supervision.
I think it's fine, like how it is now. It's like a good stability between both.
It's like really nice not to have so much screen time, because like I really love writing and reading.
Were these kids held hostage to say this, do you think? What do they do to disobedient kids in Denmark? But honestly, these kids are probably just smart enough to know the effect that it's having on their brains. We all do, really. We all know how distracting our phones can be, and kids notice this. And if you talk to a teenager, even the ones that are highly addicted to their phones, and they never give it to you without a fight, but they know that it's messing with their sleep, their attention span. And with these younger kids, parents at home and teachers at school, they should be helping to support these kids by removing or at least limiting these technological distractions. And in Denmark, some sports coaches have even realized the increase in mental and physical performance by keeping these distracting phones away during practice.
As a result, phones are banned not only in schools, but also in youth centres and sports clubs. In this athletic club, using a phone is forbidden, even during competitions.
It's like a nice pause from everything that's going on. You aren't accidentally on your phone too much during practice, because sometimes you can like pick it up to check something and then suddenly you've been there for 10 minutes and just wasted 10 minutes where you could have been jumping instead.
Could have been jumping instead. See, the bro knows. He knows he's more focused on his training when his phone isn't distracting him. I know for me, if I have my phone in the gym, I end up floating between sets, getting distracted for longer than I should. My workouts take way longer. It's just how it goes. But look at his coach. She's onto it. She knows that if she gets rid of those phones, her athletes will perform and train better.
Myla Valmod was already applying this rule before it became widespread. It seemed obvious to her.
Just the way that she's writing on the whiteboard, you know that she means business.
When a cell phone enters into the room, 2 things happen. First of all, the energy drops completely. All of a sudden, the breaks are longer. And the second thing is that somebody is kind of out-group, which is very bad for a social environment.
That's a smart woman right there, and the children she coaches, no doubt they benefit from this hugely. There is definitely a shift in attitude among young people around how technology affects their lives, and here's a cool example of some young people using a bit of shared motivation and accountability to limit the effects that mindless scrolling can have on them.
I know from my perspective, my friends I have a lot of friends who have deleted their social media or give themselves a limit on how many hours a day, maybe even minutes a day they're allowed to spend on social media. So I think definitely because of the awareness that's been put on to the subject.
Now, as you know, wheels are in motion all over the world as this problem has really grown to an unavoidable size. But as awareness has been raised, parents and schools and even governments, they're doing something about it. And the experts are hopeful that although the effect that it's had on many children, that is significant, it doesn't have to be the case for children who are starting school in the years to come.
The coming generations who are now starting public schools, who are now being brought up, I mean, they will hopefully have better conditions growing up than the current generation, because they were basically lost in the digital space. And their parents, I mean, my generation, we didn't know what to do. We didn't know what we did.
So the issue is very real with very real consequences, but Denmark, I believe, is onto something here. And they are already seeing significant positive flow-on effects for helping children spend less time in front of their screens, especially when they're at school, so they can get back to some more old school child activities. Should more countries take the approach Denmark has? Should we here in New Zealand? Well, it's an important conversation to have, and that is well underway. And we're already taking steps towards supporting children with this harm. The EU seems to be following Denmark's lead.
After betting everything on screens, Denmark is going back to basics in its schoolyards, a paradigm shift that could inspire others. The European Parliament is now backing a ban on social media access for under 16s across the EU.
So we've spoken about the intelligence of a child being affected by using tech to learn in the classroom, but what about before they even get into the classroom? How do screens affect children before they even make it to school? I know most kids these days, they know their way around an iPad at a very young age, but is that entirely a good thing? I mean, I'm not a parent, so I can't pretend to know the temptation here, and you're not going to find any judgment from me, but I can only imagine, and I could definitely see myself doing it. A young, whiny toddler and a bunch of personal admin to do, just 10 minutes of peace and quiet is needed. And that's so easily achieved by handing that young child an iPad. Boom, pacified. So as I say, absolutely no judgment from me, but it's important to know what that can do to a young child's brain, just so that you can make informed decisions. And more studies have been done. And I have to be honest, this is built on truth after all. The findings are quite sobering.
Scientists in the UK have been looking at what happens when toddlers watch fast-paced content. And this research has informed new government guidelines for screen time for under 5s.
If stuff is happening, coming at us too fast, something called the fight or flight stress system kicks in.
The advice says children under 2 should not have any screen time alone. And from the age 2 to 5, viewing should be limited to 1 hour a day.
Now that's easier said than done, I'm sure, but why have the professionals been making these types of recommendations? Well, it's come from multiple studies and it's shown a converging pattern, and it's from there that these recommendations have been made. You can find these studies on the National Library of Medicine's website. But what they found was that more time on screens leads to worse language development, weaker self-control, and less ability to focus. Even having a TV on in the background, it can affect a child's ability to speak well and think clearly. And so screens don't just add stimulation, they actually interfere with how kids' brains develop. And the studies also found that screen time replaces interactions with parents. And so this is a key part of a child's development, a key part of their speech development. And these are two critical areas and why recommendations have been given that children under the age of 2, they don't have screens at all. I mean, babies, they learn through eye contact with one another, interactions that go back and forth, and a screen just can't replicate that. And it's really in the long-term studies where it really starts getting concerning. Early screen time has long-lasting effects on children's brains. In a study of over 1,300 children who had regular exposure to TV between the ages of 1 and 3, they started to suffer with attention span issues by the age of 7. I spoke a couple of weeks ago of the issues young boys are facing with attention, and it just can't be ignored that this is one of the ways that we're setting boys up to fail. Tech is actually destroying their attention spans, and we expect them to be able to focus on boring tasks while they are constantly overstimulated by screens and devices. And then when they can't focus on those boring tasks, they get disciplined, sometimes medicated, and then told to behave more like the girls. Anyway, that's a topic for another time. The point is how they spend their early years shows up later. And what shows up is sleep disruption, behavioral issues, attention span problems, and even obesity. And so, as confronting as it is, the reality is that screens replace critical development inputs, and they should come from other sources. Most importantly, people. Because if kids are on screens, they aren't talking, playing, exploring, or imagining anything. They're not connecting with their friends or their parents, and that is so important for their development. And this is absolutely crucial for young kids' brains as it's rapidly wiring itself and learning how to interact with the outside world. Now, most kids are still going to watch screens from time to time, but what the experts are saying is it's not just important whether they watch screens or not, it's what they are watching when they're on those screens.
Parents are also being asked to choose slow-paced, age-appropriate content. Fast-paced social media style videos and AI toys and tools should be completely avoided. But why is this advice coming now? It's partly because what children are watching and how they're watching it has changed dramatically over the last 20 years. Smartphones and screens are much more common at home. Episodes are shorter and faster paced. There are more characters and movement on screen, and plot changes can happen really quickly.
All right, so there's a helpful tip for when your young ones are using screens. Keep them away from overstimulating content as much as possible, especially for kids under 2. And I'm sure that's a tough task, especially in transition, as kids and the young brains, they're used to enjoying content that is designed to keep them hooked. I mean, we all know this. We are adults, and if we're honest, we ourselves are probably a bit addicted as well. So this isn't a bash tech talk, but it is important to know the truth. So let's use technology and not be used by technology. And let's keep it away from young, growing minds as much as possible and get them connecting with their family instead.